Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We had a little bit of a false start there with the video, but no need for the video when you've got the stellar crew like Peter Sharpen and Mark Bunzel, if I do say so myself. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Peter. Well, we'll have to tell the full truth. Katie McPhail's not here to help us, so Peter's in charge.
Yeah,
So
that's what you're gonna get. You get what you pay for, Mark.
that's okay. Did fine, and we're gonna have a great show tonight. We've got a show all about weather, and one of my favorite people to come on as host, Bruce Hedrick, will be on in a little while. And Peter, how was your week? What's happening at the
Oh,
NMTA?
thanks for asking. Yeah, we are full on looking at the Seattle Boat Show Connected, which kicks off January 28th. But we had a webinar tonight with exhibitors, making sure they're comfortable with that three-dimensional technology that we like to call Matterport, which might be a new word for you, Mark.
It
Been,
is.
yeah, that's a really nice. That's a really nice. My mom says that we may be in trouble with me at the helm here. That's fair, Mom. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
full confidence in you, I can tell.
Exactly. She knows my reputation precedes me here. But I've been working on a few legislative issues as well. In particular, there's a couple crew members that were on some super yachts that were deported recently that we feel they were deported for having the wrong visa. So I'm having a meeting tomorrow with the chief of the Customs and Border Patrol with a few members to make sure that they're familiar with what a B1 visa is, and we feel like that's the appropriate visa, not a C1D visa. So that's something new for me. We're going to get a new mayor in the city of Seattle. That was some news this past week. Mayor Jenny Durkin is not running for re-election. So I've been in a few meetings about that and throwing some names around. And then another piece of news came out today was a new chair of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee in Olympia, which is a huge.
Why would that affect us, Peter?
Oh, funny you should ask. So that is where the recreational fishing issues go through. So there's 240,000 registered boats in the state of Washington. We like to say about 60% or more are used for recreational fishing all or some of the time. And if there was one committee that issue would go through, would be that committee. And unfortunately, the past 18 years, we've had a nemesis of recreational fishing at the helm there. He lost his reelection. So we've got a friend and Representative Mike Chapman from the Port Townsend to Port Angeles area who's going to be chairing that, who
Hmm.
understands that boating means business, the recreational fishing pumps a lot of money into local economies around the state. So really excited to get to work with Representative Chapman. He's been a really important voice for us in Olympia on copper bottom paint. He texted me this morning, he texted me last night. He was on pins and needles, and so he got the nod. So looking forward to working with him. Olympia's
Oh,
going to look,
that's fantastic.
yeah, huge news. It rarely does this. I feel like this good news happens to us. And then a session will look a lot differently next year, Mark. The details are still coming out, but it will be via Zoom, first time ever.
Really?
Lawmakers are just asked to, at the most, prime sponsor 7 bills. Before there was could be up to 100. That's no joke of bills they could prime sponsor, and they're not going to be running any sort of courtesy legislative hearings. They're going to be focusing on equity. They're going to be looking through buckets of equity, climate change, and economic recovery / COVID, especially on the House
So
side.
the residents of Washington can actually see this time their legislators in action.
Well, I'd like to think they always could. There's a channel we like to call TVW, which is like NBC for dorks, which is always
I've
one of my
missed
favorite.
that one. I'm
Yeah,
sorry I didn't
it's okay.
watch.
You haven't seen me testify. That hurts. Yeah, I think it's channel 23 on a lot of different cable packages. It's tvw.org. If you're not checking in on that, it's an awesome Washington State uh, homegrown product. Congressman Denny Heck, who's our new lieutenant governor, came up with this idea that he really wants to bring democracy to the people. So every legislative hearing, every vote, and then press conferences are all streamed for Joe and Jane's six pack to view, and you, Mark.
I have watched the governor on that, but I hadn't watched a legislative session. So are
Yeah,
you saying the legislative sessions will be on Zoom and also on Channel 23?
that's correct.
Oh, that's fantastic. That'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's gonna be. I could go on. I know this is what the show's about tonight, right, Mark? No,
No,
uh,
no, we'll get to
you're
Bruce
gonna
eventually.
you're gonna give me the hook soon. But just from a political science perspective, it's gonna be fascinating. The role of lobbyists, the role of relationships, I think will be interesting to see. I think lobbyists that have those relationships will have even more value. It's really hard to start a new relationship with lawmakers. or
Yeah.
anybody during Zoom during the pandemic. So lobbies could have even more power because they know that they have the texting ability to contact lawmakers.
Yes.
So we shall see. But yeah, I'll put a few. I didn't know you were so interested, Mark. That makes me feel good. I'll put a few websites in the chat where people can keep an eye out for their lawmakers.
Well, maybe we should talk a little bit more about this just before the legislative session starts and people could get enthusiastic. And if you could map out for us some of the sessions that are of particular interest to boaters, or fishing, or recreational funds. I also have many questions about how our recreational funds are spent. So anything related to that, I'm all over it.
Sweet. Well, I could do it. We could talk with Doug Levy of Arbaugh.
Yeah.
He and I could tag team on it. So yeah, great. Well, I will.
So with
I'll
these,
I'll write that down.
so with these sessions, the Zoom sessions with legislature, do we get to? Is there going to be chat open on that? Can we?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess so. But you know, sometimes with these webinars, the chat is dysfunction. But I will put a plug in for our chat, which is totally enabled. So please use the chat box.
Yes, we do monitor it. We do respond to it.
Yeah, and it's if you want to contact your lawmaker, you're more than willing to reach out to me. I can make sure the addresses are super easy. The email addresses, it's the lawmaker's first name, period, their last name, and then at leg.wa.gov. And as you know, Mark, I write a monthly column in Northwest Yachting where I try to demystify our legislative process. So
you do a great job of it. It's great to read your columns. I do read your columns, Peter, all the time. I critique them and grade them, but I don't share them.
Whoa. I didn't expect that. You could just put your period right at the part I read your columns. I didn't need to know.
All been good.
Oh, that's nice to hear. So yeah, that's my week. A lot of boat show talk.
We had
what are you doing?
We had during the show tonight, Lorena's going to talk about, last week we talked about the boat parades, and I took my family to the Anacortes Boat Parade on last Saturday night. We sat out there. It was just a gorgeous evening for a boat parade because there was very little wind. It was reasonably, I wouldn't call it warm, but it wasn't freezing like the last 9 years. And as Lorena will tell you and show you, we had some 43 boats in Anacortes attend, and I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it for her. But the Landons were even in the parade. How's that for reporting?
Not surprised, as they should be.
Yeah, they should, and they got lights up on their boat, and
but we weren't definitely not as well decorated as many of the boats that were very, very well decorated. Some very nice stuff, some traditional lights, some very high-tech stuff. It was lots of lights out there and a lot of boats. It was very.
Any photos?
I was worried you were going to say well endowed with lights. I thought that was the wrong term, but that's okay.
There were many
but we've got. What was that, Lorena?
I was just saying it was many more boats than we expected to see.
Yeah.
And they did go all out in their decorations, so we'll be better prepared next year. We thought ours were pretty good decorations, but some folks go all out, so we will know for next year's event.
Yeah, the Clark Griswold of boating.
Had a great time. It was great weather.
So awesome. Picking up with we'll come back to the boat parade. Lorena's going to give us a full report, including pictures. Following our rundown, I don't think we have any new news out of the San Juan and Gulf Islands or San Juan Islands, do we, or the local area?
No.
We have a couple of announcements on things that are happening that voters should be aware of, mainly in the Puget Sound area.
Why don't you go ahead right into that?
This I was going to say about this border closure thing, Mark. Speaking of Saturday Night Live, which of course we will. There's an old skit about this king of Spain, and it was like he's still dead kind of thing. And I feel like the border is still closed. Like there is no news there, and
there is no news there, and we'd report on it if there was. And
like I guess I will say
every week.
The vaccine, though, I think our country is supposed to approve it today, and Seattle, Kansas, Carolina will be getting it soon. So that could be a real game changer. But yeah,
I think that's real promising.
Yep.
And I'm holding out that the border might be open next spring, late or early summer. I think we've got a good chance. But that's my opinion. not Prime Minister Trudeau.
The news does look very hopeful. In fact, local businesses are working very hard to get out the vaccine when it arrives. For example, the local dry ice manufacturers are busy processing and distributing the dry ice to keep it at the 90-degree below, zero temperature. And one such company is called Reliant Dry Ice. They're actually in Lakewood, Washington, and they deliver to hospitals and medical clinics. And the manager there, Caleb Stone, tells us it can be a challenge. The dry ice in the solid state is constantly fogging or sublimating back to its natural state, which is a gas. And he's saying that 10 pounds of dry ice can actually literally disappear within 24 to 36 hours. So it'll take a lot of fresh dry ice to replenish the supplies. But he and his team are working diligently to work out the logistics. And he says he may need to hire more employees to keep up with demand. And then tech companies, they're busy developing tracking devices. And Raycon Dynamics in Seattle, they actually have a tracking device called Track. And they are working with Global Stars as a satellite communications partner. So they will be actually tracking the delivery and the route and making sure it arrived at the correct temperature. So lots of exciting things happening. I think lots of good things will come out of this in the end.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I have one update, and that's last week I reported on the containers that fell off the ship, the one APUS, and they've now come up with a count. It's 1,816 containers. They've identified the hazardous materials. Some of it was lithium batteries, some of it was some chemicals that are of concern. That ship is now back in Kobe, Japan, and they're resetting the containers on it. What I found very interesting, though, is that the seas where this incident happened were not as extreme as one would think. The NOAA, Peter, I don't know if you have that graphic that I sent you. The NOAA forecast was that in that area of the Pacific Ocean, the seas would be 16 meters, up to 16 meters in height. And for those of you wanting to do that calculation real quickly, let's just call it 45-foot waves. Well, in actuality, the ship reported that the waves were not that high. They were more in the 4 to 5 meter range, which is still significant, but they called it more large swells. And it's kind of interesting that the swells, scroll down a little bit more, Peter, and it'll have that NOAA chart showing what the NOAA was predicting for that area for the sea state, and showing those right there, there it goes, those 16-meter swells. And the winds were not that high. This is what surprised me, 12 to 15 knots of wind. You know, I associate a bad storm in the middle of the Pacific Ocean as these ferocious winds whipping up waves of up to 16 meters. But in this case, it wasn't as much. And apparently it just set a rolling motion into effect with this container ship that ended up breaking free. And they promised a very, very aggressive investigation that will show exactly what caused this accident. They're going to be investigating the crew. The ship was only less than a year and a half old, so we're not talking about an old ship, but there's quite a bit of concern about the 1,800 plus containers that are floating out in the Pacific Ocean. So we'll keep reporting on this. I think it's very interesting. I'll be curious to hear when some of our sailing friends unfortunately come across these containers. I hope they don't, but it's inevitably going to happen, or these containers are going to wash on shore The currents in that area sweep from west to east, which means we'll get containers on shore in Alaska, in the Aleutians and Southeast Alaska, and potentially in British Columbia and the Washington coast. So we'll follow the story as it goes. It'll be very interesting. But that's the APUS 1, or the 1 APUS, that incident that happened a week ago Monday. So Lorena, you have a few more. Do you want to go right into the boat
Actually, I
parade?
had a question for you, Mark. Why are you sitting in front of your boat right now?
This is a reminiscent picture. It is my boat. Thank you, Peter, for recognizing that. And that's from Cortez Island, from the beautiful little place of Squirrel Cove. That's my boat sitting at the dock at Squirrel Cove, and I took that shot from the shore. And that, to me, typifies part of the beauty of British Columbia. And like many other boaters, I miss it, and can't wait to get back there, hopefully next season.
But don't you have other stuff in your office that wanted you to now have a virtual background?
Oh boy, yeah, I paid Peter for that.
Yeah.
So part of the reason I have a virtual background up is because I'm surrounded. I'm in the Wagner Guide office in beautiful Anacortes, Washington, and I'm surrounded by boxes of Wagner Guides and ports and passes. So we've been talking about this for months, and I think some people really questioned whether it was real or not. And it is real. It is here, and it is being shipped out to stores this week. Next week, individual orders will be shipped. And those of you that ordered in advance, we're going to make sure it gets there under your Christmas tree in time. So we're real excited about it. It's a special thing for Leonard, Lorena, and myself that we work pretty hard on this. We're already working on the next edition. That's the funny thing. And, we work on it for about a year, and then all of a sudden it becomes real. And now I have to tell you, we do cringe. We worry about, is there a typo in there somewhere? And we have checked it once, twice, 3 times. We swear there's not a typo left in there, but there always seems to be one that sneaks back in there. So we'll give a prize to the first person who can find an error in the 2021 Wagner Cruising Guide.
Yeah, typically it's been $1,000 to each person that chimes in. With
that's a myth, Peter.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you for propagating that.
That's what I'm here for.
But
we did.
But we will adequately recognize the person who finds the non-existent error in the 2021 Wagner Cruising Guide. So it's available. Place your orders. They're selling fast, and we're pretty proud of it. So thank you.
And the fun one you can look for in there is in the 2021 Wagner Guide, there is a cameo of Mark Bunzel. And so for those of you that can find it, send us an email, let us know where it is, and let it be confirmed that you found it.
Yeah, Leonard and Lorena told me about this. I went through the entire book. I didn't find it. So it's there. They showed me where it is. It's in shadow. Let me give a hint that way.
How many of those do you autograph, Mark?
Anybody who finds it, I'll be happy to autograph it.
Oh, wow.
We'll announce where it is at a future program. But
right on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Lorena, tell us about the boat parade.
Okay. Well, before we do that, Leonard's got a few more updates for us here real quick.
Oh, good.
There are a couple. These are in Hood Canal. There's another military operation going on, and that's going to be on December 15th from 8 a.m. until noon. And it's going to be about 1/3 of a mile off of the security barrier off of Bangor. And there's an area out there they're going to be doing military operations with high-speed maneuvers and, once again, blank ammunition. So I got to go see one of these.
Yeah.
I want to see what's going on.
Just don't get too close.
I don't think.
Yeah, whenever you get close to there, I get nervous.
Well, there's always that stat about if Kitsap County succeeded from the United States, it would be the 3rd most nuclear armed country in the world.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the other one is Brownsville Keyport in Brownsville. And this is the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. and they'll be conducting operations of semi-submersible and submersible area vessels in the charted torpedo testing area. It's a restricted area that's charted. It sits right between Brownsville Marina and up to Keyport, and kind of occupies half of the channel in there. If you take a look at it, it's one of those that's been there forever. And I would venture to guess that a lot of boaters have been through there and never even realized there was a restricted area in there. And so those operations are going on now through December 23rd. And there will be a surface vessel with red flashing lights to warn you and let you know that there's some operations going on in that area. And
so that doesn't mean a Christmas parade if you see the red flashing or the blue flashing lights.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
If the submersible is decorated, it's really hard to see. So.
Okay.
And the last one is Duwamish Waterway underneath the West Seattle Bridge in Seattle is going to be closed to vessel traffic December 21st and 22nd in the morning, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., totally closed. They're apparently bringing down some scaffolding work ladder or a platform that was underneath there. So that's closed again on the December 22nd and 21st and 22nd in the morning. So you can't go through the Duwamish area.
Well, based on the reports of the West Seattle Bridge, I'm not sure I want to go underneath it, but thank you.
That was my first thought too, was even if it's open, I'm not sure I want to, if I were going under there, I would not linger, that's for sure. Lorena?
All right, so you want to key up the pictures from, we have a few pictures from the Anacortes.
While you're queuing that up, we got a notation on the chat line. Lorena, I don't know if you saw this yet,
yes.
that the Des Moines Yacht Club, which we visited and we love the group down there. They hosted a lighted boat parade on December 5th. They had 31 boats and traveled up to Three Tree Point and back and to Redondo. They had great weather and had a great time. And if you ever get a chance, go see the Des Moines Yacht Club and how they launch their boats. It's a once in a lifetime experience. I'll just leave it at that. They do a phenomenal job, and maybe we'll do a show one night and show how they do it, because it's pretty amazing. So congratulations, Des Moines.
I would second that. They're a very active yacht club and do a great job, and we want to recognize their lighted boat parade, which took place on December 5th.
And it's nice. I was going to say, did you know that Des Moines is French for cheap fuel?
Yes.
Yes, I did know that. And it is the best, the most economical fuel in Puget Sound. They pride themselves at that. They keep that. Scott Wilkins, the harbor master there, just does a super job. And we've had a lot of fun working with them. And it's a great place to visit.
So the lighted boat parades that are coming up on December 11th and 12th is the South Sound Case Inlet, hosted by Fair Harbor Marina. Also on December 12th at 5 p.m. is the Gig Harbor, hosted by Gig Harbor Yacht Club. December 19th at 5:30, Commencement Bay, hosted by Tacoma Yacht Club. December 12th, Liberty Bay, by Polesville Marina Yacht Club. And Children's Hospital Benefit Lighted Boat Parade, also hosted by Children's Hospital and some other local businesses. That's on December 19th at 7 p.m. in Lake Union, Seattle. And let's see, the last one here. Don't want to forget about the Portland area. December 4th through December 22nd, they actually parade for 15 nights, and you can, of course, participate in as many nights as you like. But you can get the details on the websites for these lighted boat parades at wagonerguide.com updates, and also at wagonerguide.com. Just scroll down and you'll find an article about the boat parades. So check it out.
And in Portland, they're parading every night to their downtown anyway. So there you go.
Yeah. And Beth Carpenter had a comment on the chat line about the Anacortes Lighted Boat Parade. Yeah, it was super fun, and she and her group joined. Couldn't find any registration information, and seeing this is our home port, we're going to work hard to have more information next year about Anacortes and some of the other boat parades that hopefully we'll have as good a weather next year as we had this year. So that's it for the boat parades. Any other new news?
I would just mention that the Seattle Boat Show tickets go on sale December 15th, Mark, which I'll put that in the chat as well. I'll be busy in the chat later on in the show.
Yeah, there's going to be several choices of different ticket levels at various prices, and look at it carefully. Prices going up to $100 per ticket.
89.
And you may think $100. You're right, 89. That's right. They brought it down. You might think $89 for a boat show ticket, but that includes all the paid for seminars, including all the Boat Show University seminars that you would like to watch, which in years prior were up to $55 each per seminar. And the experts are coming back for the Seattle Boat Show. So Nigel Calder is going to be making a special presentation, actually 2 presentations at the Boat Show. The Landons will be presenting, I'll be presenting. And if you watch the Boat Show video that'll be going on during the entire boat show, it'll be hosted by none other than our famous Peter Schrappen.
This is the applause button. Is that where I should be?
Yeah, yes.
Clap for
And
myself.
we know we'll have that one mystery viewer from Missouri who will be watching the entire time Peter's on air. Thank you, Peter's mother, for always watching.
My #1 sponsor. Yeah, no, it's the $89. You also get a West Marine 20% off discount. There's Boat US registrations in there. So it is a incredible stocking stuffer. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting in their office.
And a Wagner cruising guide.
Wagner cruising guide. I mean,
Wagner cruising guide.
Yeah.
I object to them giving it away free, but because it's with the $89 ticket,
that was generous.
That's a hell of a bargain.
We're excited about it. The 34 hours of entertainment starting January 28th. You can watch me for free. Why wouldn't you? And then you can jump in the show starting at $5. More on that down the road. I think we've gabbed on long enough, Mark. What else do we have in store tonight?
I think we have.
Yeah.
We've got a special
overstayed our
guest
welcome.
tonight, who hopefully we didn't lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Finished
up his Christmas cards.
Bruce Hedrick is special for me because when I first got involved in the boating business here and with Fine Edge, Bruce invited me to be a writer for Northwest Yachting magazine. Bruce used to be the managing editor and did just phenomenal things with Northwest Yachting for years. He's been known in the Puget Sound area forever as an incredible racing sailor, member of the Seattle Yacht Club, and involved in just a number of activities. And Bruce kind of showed me the ropes to understanding the Northwest, and then sent me on some incredible assignments. I mean, I'll never forget the time Bruce said, Mark, we have an invitation to go on a nuclear aircraft carrier. I can't go. Can you go? And I said, I'm in. I'm in. And the next thing I was shot off of a aircraft carrier, or landed on an aircraft carrier. And I was on an aircraft carrier for 28 hours. Thank you, Bruce. Where the heck is he? He's supposed to be on here.
He's on. He's on.
I'm on. I'm here.
Yeah, he's here.
I'm here.
There he is. But Bruce is now, he claims he's retired, but he's full-time a weather router. And I'm going to let Bruce explain what a weather router does and is. And a weather router is somebody that you don't know you need it until you really, really need it. And then it might be too late, but Bruce can save your bacon and help you get to a safe area. So Bruce, what is a weather router? What do you do for a living?
Well, you know, you don't really make a living at this, but you do have a lot of vicarious adventures getting people safely on their way and to their destination. And that's what a weather router does. And so I'll talk to the owner, learn about the boat, and, you know, whether it's a sailboat or powerboat, doesn't really matter. And we'll put the specifics in. I'll put the specifics in to the program that I use. And then, say the owner wants to avoid any seas over 1 meter or any winds in excess of 20 knots. You put that in there, and then you tell me when you want to go. And if tides are involved and if fuel consumption is an issue, that can be factored in. And basically, I'll have 2 conversations a day with the owner on the boat, and we'll see where he is, how he's doing, how the conditions that I'm forecasting compare to what he really has. And then that way he avoids the storms, he gets there on time and doesn't run out of fuel, and hopefully has a good time. And so far, knock on wood, it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, I've recommended Bruce to a number of my clients who are cruising to Alaska and wanted to make sure they had a good trip. And he's just done a super job and given them peace of mind and even told them when not to leave the dock, when it's time to sit back, read a book for the day and wait for a better way to tomorrow or the next day. So I highly recommend it. It's not cheap, but worth every penny of it. So Bruce, but rather than doing a complete 45-minute plug for your business, we wanted to talk about the weather and some of the great things that are now coming from NOAA. What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that in the last 6 weeks, the attitude over at NOAA and the National Weather Service has completely changed. And there's new enthusiasm there with an incoming administration that appreciates science, appreciates the process, and is willing to listen to science in terms of how they're going to be running this administration, because it hasn't been fun for them over there. But as a result, there are some great new things coming out of there. The first of which is Congress finally allotted $505 million to make NOAA's supercomputers faster. And this had been allocated a while ago. However, Congress said, nope, you can't buy the world's fastest computers because they're made by the Chinese. And so the last thing the United States government wanted was a Chinese supercomputer in the middle of the National Weather Service. So now they have allocated $105 million to purchase 2 new supercomputers from Cray, who is here in Seattle, Pacific Northwest. And they'll be located, one will be in Manassas, one will be in Phoenix. They should be operational in 2022 and will start running all of NOAA's weather forecasting models. And how fast are they? Well, currently, the current computers, which are 4, can do 8 quadrillion calculations per second. The new ones will do 24 quadrillion calculations per second. That's triple the current speed. And obviously, when we talk about modeling and things like that, these are 3-dimensional models, which are essentially complex equations. And so the more variables you have in them, and you divide the atmosphere up into cubes, and the smaller you make the cubes, the more computing power you need. So this is going to make a huge improvement in the accuracy for NOAA. And they have also been working, and just a little over a year ago, NOAA integrated the newest model that they have, the finite volume cubed FV3 model, and that became their standard, which is the Global Forecast System, GFS. And so that is the new model that they're using, but they go by the old name GFS.
Have we caught up, Bruce? For years, it was my understanding that the European models were more advanced, had more funding, and were potentially more accurate than the US models. Are we now catching up?
We are not yet catching up. We've got to get those new computers. We are still behind. I'll show you a accuracy graph that was run this last summer to show you the difference, but we're getting there. We're still behind, and we just took too long to try and catch up. The funds weren't allocated, And what really spurred things on was Hurricane Sandy. And the European model predicted exactly what Sandy would do, take that left-hand turn into New York. And the GFS model did not. And that, needless to say, got people's attention.
Wow. I mean, that's where I've seen the models where during hurricane forecast, they'll show you, National Hurricane Center will show you the different tracks by the different models. I had no idea how this worked beforehand. I still don't understand how it worked, but now I understand the value in it. And, but the new models are going to have higher resolution, more accurate. What else?
Well, I think it's important to understand how these, what they're called ensemble forecasts work. And so right now the GFS model runs an ensemble forecast number of 21. That is, there are 21 places that you take the same model and run it in different ways. That's what all those different tracks come up from on, you know, like plotting the hurricane. And you can do that with GFS or with the European model, either one. But now when we get the new computers, that will come up to 31. It'll go from 21 to 31 different models, different iterations. And so basically it gives the ensemble forecast, the forecasters will have more confidence in the storm's projected track. So these are all called members. And basically, as we've seen with models, you know, the accuracy, I would say, going from the old GFS was about 72 hours. With the new FV3, we've gone out to 96. The European models are out well over 120 hours. And so they are still more accurate and consistently more accurate. And what's even more interesting is that the Canadian model, the one that they've done now, the GEM is what it's called, that one this last summer was increasingly more accurate than our GFS model. So no, we're not catching up yet, but we're taking steps.
Wow. So Canadian models, which many of us use when we go up, when we're allowed to go over the border and look at the Canadian forecast, have actually been fairly accurate from what you're saying.
Well, there's a problem there between the forecasting, the CMC, the Canadian Meteorological Center, and Environment Canada, which does the forecasts. They don't use those models. For Environment Canada does not use those models. They have, Environment Canada has their own, and they will traditionally up wind speeds, up storm conditions. If there is less than a 5% chance, they'll still run up the flags no matter what. And they're gonna, I don't know when they're gonna change, but the pressure is on. The good news is that we now have access to the Canadian high resolution forecast charts. And you know why Environment Canada doesn't use them, I'm not sure, but we can get them. So it's good to have those. And it's like when you start talking about the model high resolution rapid refresh, when you're doing your runs from down here up to Alaska, there's a gap. And that's because HRRR does not run in that area from about Nanaimo north to Ketchikan or Prince Rupert. But now with what they call VisaWeb, the Canadian high resolution program model, you've got it now. And it has been excellent. We've used it on the race around Vancouver Island, as well as on South Straits. And we use it as a backup model for Swiftsure when we're allowed to do those races, of course.
Yeah.
Bruce, I would encourage, or actually I would, for everyone at home, I encourage you to use the chat box if you have any questions for the weather guru, Bruce Hedrick. Bruce, what's this winter looking like weather-wise? What are the models saying?
Well, it's going to be, I mean, let's not count last week, but this is a La Nina year. And that means that there is cold water flowing to the west along the equator. And traditionally, when that happens, that means we are going to have a wetter and cooler winter and a cooler and wetter spring, to be followed by a drier and warmer summer, which is, if you like fires last summer, you're going to love this coming summer, unfortunately. So, but the good news is that one of the new forecasting tools that we get this year will show this surface and upper level smoke concentrations, and they've got better forecasting models for that. So we can actually avoid that. And the experiments, the HRRRX program experimental, actually showed those this last summer and were amazingly accurate. So it's getting better. And with the advent of the additional computing power, it's going to get more accurate. So it's all good. So, I mean, there's still no reason to stay home. If they let us out, let us go to Canada, let's go.
Bruce, I get asked the question often regarding visibility is fog. Now, I know as a pilot how fog gets reported to us, including covering the dew point temperature. But how come in our marine forecast, they can sometimes forecast fog, but many times not? Why is that?
Well, it's because of the variables that we have here that go into what causes fog. And basically, the temperature has to reach the dew point, which is a function of the amount of water that's the humidity, the amount of water in the air. And the great thing is that this new program that will be coming online this summer will have improved dew point forecasting. So if you can access this and you can see what the forecast for dew point is, you can also integrate that with your temperature wherever you are and see what the likelihood is and do your own, which is really the goal of this, is to be able for you to be your own weatherman and do your own forecasting. Is you can see what the forecast for the dew point is, compare that with the temperature, and you'll have a much better idea when fog is going to form. And so that will also definitely improve the forecasting. Again, computing power, and as they say, good data in, good data out.
Interesting, very interesting. And related to this, one of my big questions has always been, I know for weather, for me as a mariner, sea conditions are incredibly important to me and what the sea conditions are going to be. And I always have to personally integrate the wind against the current. And the weather never takes into account the current. Now, do you do that as a router?
I will guess at it, absolutely, because basically I have very good confidence in 48 hours worth of forecasting, even up in Canada, and I have access to all the tidal currents, and of course I've got my ports and passes copy handy, so
Ding.
I can look.
Well, I was going to make fun of Bruce for having the Wagner cruising guy strategically placed behind his right shoulder. What was that place there, Bruce?
It's just where it lives.
Sure.
It's on my desk. I can't do anything without it. I mean, no boater can. You've got to have ports and passes, Wagner.
Okay, Bruce, don't overdo it.
All of it. All
right. So anyway, as I was saying, but with that data, with ports and passes, where you know what the tidal currents are going to be, and now you've got within 48 hours good forecasting showing wind direction and wind strength, you can pretty well tell in specific areas when go and no-go times are. And will that eventually be integrated into these? Absolutely. Just a question of when. There are some other, shall we say, priorities like aviation and commercial aviation, where they get sort of the first run at the new apps and the new products. So it's going to happen. Just don't, but it's still, I think you're better off. And then the other thing is, always utilize the lighthouse observations, where you've got a real human being on the ground at the lighthouse telling you what's going on where you're going to be going. And that is just, don't ever ignore that.
Bruce and I both teach seminars in weather, and in addition to lighthouse reports, I include the ocean buoy reports. They're my go-to method to determine that go or no go, because we get actual real-time data on sea conditions with the wave heights and the wave interval, which to me is absolutely critical. So I couldn't agree more, and I can't wait till they integrate that into the weather. It just seems like two different offices. The tides and currents are different from the weather people, yet those of us who use this information, it's critical to have them together.
Yeah,
And
you've got to utilize both of them all the time.
yeah,
I've got a few
correct.
questions in the chat. What models does XM Weather use in British Columbia, Bruce?
Oh, the XM, is that satellite?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I am not sure which they use.
Okay.
I would guess that it's either the GFS model or the European model. I think the Sirius in Europe uses the European model, but here I would guess that it's GFS. And GFS is what PredictWind uses, your commercial suppliers. Somebody is using some variation of GFS.
Okay. And Sue Peterson's wondering, when cruising in Canadian waters and not having access to much data except Environment Canada, is there a suggested adjustment to apply to their forecasts?
Oh, no. But again, as Mark says, when even you're cruising up there in Canada, you can still get the NDBC, the National Data Buoy Center, which are the buoy reports. You can get those when you're in Canada, and it applies to the Canadian buoys. And so they, for the most part, have all that same data. And you can apply that along with the lighthouse observations, and those are available on VHF. On VHF, you can't get all of the NDBC data, but you can certainly get wind direction and wind strength.
You can for your local area. They give almost all of the buoy reports, and there aren't that many that are critical for each area. Halibut Bank, for example, is critical for the Strait of Georgia, and the buoy is located off of Bowen Island, so it's right out there in the middle, and it's my go-to when I'm doing a crossing to determine that the Mary Island Lighthouse will give you.
Yeah, make sure the Mary Island Lighthouse is working, and it has been spurious, shall we say, in its readouts lately. But that's, yeah, Sentry Shoal, any of the buoys up there in Queen Charlotte Sound, you look at those before you go around Cape Caution. You look at all of those to get what the real-time conditions are and try to see what's coming your way.
Absolutely. We teach this from any of our people going up on the flotilla or going up to Alaska, of where to get those buoy reports and the lighthouse reports. And I'm glad you pointed out that the lighthouse reports are real human observers. And what I also like to point out is when you're up in that area, you can usually call them on VHF. It's in the Wagner Guide, but I believe it's VHF 83, and talk to the lighthouse operators. They've got a pretty lonely job. And during the day, they may be out mowing the lawn, but if they're in the lighthouse, they'll answer the radio and chat with you. And Egg Island Lighthouse, when you're going up, which is just north of Cape Caution, is one of my favorite to talk to, because they are out there in the middle of nowhere, completely surrounded by water. And they look forward to those helicopter deliveries of newspaper, books, and of course, fresh food every week. So give them a call if you're up in that area.
Yeah, tell Mark Bunzel sent you.
Oh, they know.
Yeah, the phone rings like, oh God, it's Bunzel again.
It's him again. Yep.
That guy. Bruce, have you always been interested in the weather, or did you have a Hurricane Sandy kind of moment in your life where you're like, I really want to get to know more about weather?
Basically because I was, I went to school here at the University of Washington, and I was supposed to major in oceanography, which I actually did. But really, I majored in sailing and sailboat racing and minored in oceanography. And I realized very quickly that coming up here from Portland, this was a whole new world when it came to weather. And so you had to really understand that. And so it was mandatory, I thought, that if you're going to succeed in sailboat racing, you better figure the weather out.
Good stuff. Here's a question, Bruce, in the chat. How accurate is the Windy app and what model does it use?
Let's see, the Windy app, I noticed that the resolution on that changes. And so resolution, to explain that term, is you basically divide the atmosphere up into cubes. And the smallest, the highest resolution now is, and this will be coming, it's not available yet, but the smallest is 1 kilometer on the side of the cube. So you've divided the whole atmosphere up into these cubes. And then the, for instance, HRRR uses 3 kilometers. That's their high resolution. University of Washington, WRF GFS model is 1 1/3 kilometers on a side. And really that is another, you know, we're very fortunate in this area to have that. The Windy model, I think, uses a fairly rough, like probably 12 kilometers or maybe even 36 kilometers on a side. So 12 kilometers is like 7.5 miles and 36 is 22. So they, you know, it tends to be fairly low resolution. It's great for a visual picture, but I'm not sure, I certainly wouldn't use it. You know, it's great for looking at what we call the synoptic wind. That is, what is the wind offshore really doing? When you get and do the coastal cruising and sailing in the Sound, you end up looking at what we call mesoscale weather, which is North American meso or HRRR. And those are higher resolution than what Windy is.
Bruce, do you have any slides you wanted to share?
Yeah, we could, let's see how badly I can screw this up.
Oh, don't say that.
Bruce, while you're doing this, have you had some moments in routing, and you've been a tactician in a number of major races, where you've been able to call the turn point of a weather situation for the tactics for a sailboat, for example?
Yes, in fact, probably one of the ones that I am most fondly remembered for was the 2015 Transpac race, which was just very slow. We were on a Santa Cruz 50 called Allure. It took us 12 days on a race that normally should take 9, and that's because the first 3 days were like sailing in Puget Sound. But I called the jibe to the finish from 1,100 miles out. And the crew was just, no frigging way. And, you know, I said, well, you know, there's a bottle of scotch from each of you on this one. And so we nailed it and we won our class. And so the crew was, you know, they, you know, I got it done. So that was about as close as you can get. Wow.
So what you did is you told the crew the wind would be shifting within what, 10 minutes of it shifting?
No, I mean, you get the GFS upgrades every 6 hours. And so I had run the model at, you know, midnight and then at 6 in the morning. And my brother came over and poked me and said, what the hell's going on? Why are you up? Why are you doing this? I said, well, the left-hand turn signal is on. I think we got a jibe. And we're gonna jibe and we're gonna, you know, do what we've done. We were in the lead, and when you're in the lead, you do what keeps you in the lead, and you do that by doing what you've done before. And so I said, we're gonna jibe, we're gonna go for it. And they were okay, and we did. And the guys that were behind us kept going. And then by about 6 to 8 hours later, you know, you get an update. And they said, well, where are we? What's happening? I said, well, to give you sort of a summation of what has happened since we jibed, we have been aimed at the finish doing 12 knots, while those guys on the other jibe are sailing the longer course, and we've opened up distance on them. So, you know, you just have to keep saying, well, you know, if it looks like we're losing, we can jibe back. But for right now, we're right where we want to be.
So you didn't have to buy a drink for the rest of the trip?
Absolutely not. And also, I got to say that when we finished in Hawaii, they could not throw me in the harbor. You know, that's like, so
That's fantastic.
anyway, so does this slide show up here that I've got?
Not unless it's an all black one.
No,
Oh,
we're
wait.
getting a spinning ball telling us to be patient.
Oh, that's not good.
Well, let's see if it comes back up.
Let's try this.
Oh, there you go.
How's that? Okay, so this is the graph, the anomaly correlation graph between the European model, which is the blue graph, and the red, which is GFS, and the black, which is the Canadian. And if you sort of squint your eyes and sort of, you know, average the readout here, you see that the European model is consistently more accurate than either the US or the Canadian model. And you can see that the wheels really came off the GFS model, you know, towards about the 11th of June. This was this last summer. And so I just thought that was interesting. So anyway, that shows that. And then the other one we should look at is, if you want to see a little bit, oh, no, now the really, this is cool. Now, did this come up or not?
Nope.
Not yet.
No, Bill Shane is suggesting clicking twice, which is always a good call.
All right, let's try that.
While you're pulling that up, Captain Linda Lewis points out that I think she said one of the marine.weather.gov makes point location forecast available for small geographic areas. Lots of information, including dew point, which is good. And she asked the question, what model does this site use? So I don't know the answer. You might know, Bruce.
What is the name of the site?
That's marine.weather.gov. So I assume that's a NOAA site, but maybe not.
Oh, well then if that's what they're using GFS.
Okay.
And that's the primary one that the government uses.
And there was another question here from David. PredictWind uses PWG, PWE, ECMWF, GFS, NAM, HRRR, Spire, UKMO. Of those, which are the most accurate here?
Again, it depends on the area that you are. He mentioned the UK one. If you're in the United Kingdom, then you obviously want to use that. We used it when we were cruising in France last summer. That worked fine. The HRRR is strictly continental United States, and coming up is experimental, the Hawaii. And that's going to be new this summer, that they have high resolution so that when you're making your approach into there, you can actually see what the high resolution forecast is for.
Now, Bruce, does that mean that they've focused their computer calculations on the data for that area and they're crunching that area to get the best forecast for that place? Or is it the instrumentation for that area?
It is the data, you know, it's all called data assimilation. And so the data for that area comes in, and that is what is run in the GFS models.
Interesting.
Bruce, Joel's asking, what's the best website for marine weather forecasts in the San Juan Islands?
Well, that's a simple, straightforward question. Thank you.
Yeah, that is the HRRR or the University of Washington MM5 WRF-GFS 1 1/3 resolution, that is just far and away the best. And so
I don't think this is happening, Bruce.
I'm sorry about that.
Bruce, where can people find you?
Basically, the best place is lbruce@msn.com. So boy, this still doesn't look like it's sharing.
lbruce@msn.com.
No, it's not coming up on your computer, Bruce.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Now, Bruce, I have been a follower in the past of Cliff Moss. So as I turn into more and more of a weather geek, I enjoy reading his website. Yet I'm a professional. Some are critical of Cliff.
You know, we owe Cliff Moss more than we can ever pay him, because he is the one that, along with Senator Maria Cantwell, got us our Doppler radar for the West Coast. Because in the past, that was one of the slides that I have that I can't get to, is the Doppler slides. But it ended up that after Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans said, oh, we need better Doppler radar. You know, we can't have these storms. So Cliff Moss and Maria Cantwell went to work on them and said, you know, hey, we will take the old one and you guys can have the new one. And they installed it out there, you know, got government permission and got it installed out there at Langley Hill. That's where we finally have an eye out into the Pacific, because the Doppler listed as SeaTac is not only not at SeaTac, it's completely shielded from looking into the ocean by the Olympic Mountains. And so since we got that out there at Langley Hill out there on the coast, we can now look out into the ocean and get a much better view of what's going on. So,
what are we looking at here, Bruce? It's come up.
Okay, this is a verification summary of the new HRR and what we're going to be getting and what's new. And so what we're concerned about here is continental US West, that's and mostly improved, but here's the key, the 2 meter dew point. And this is for your fog forecast. And so this has been proven improved, as has the 10 meter winds. And so this is what is coming up for us when we start going down the road on HRRR version 4. So let's see.
So again, it's taking the data that exists already, but now crunching it, those smaller cubes. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yeah, exactly. You've taken, you know, the HRRR cubes are 3 kilometers on a side, you know, which is 1.8 miles, and it's going to go down to 1 kilometer on the side, about 0.621. And so that's where your gain in accuracy is going to come from. So now, is there anything up there on?
Looks good. Yeah, current NWS opening page, National
Okay,
Weather
We've
Service.
got your opening page.
Yeah, so this is what this looks like today, National Weather Service, Seattle. And here's our radar down here, Langley Hill and Seattle. These are both shot at the same time. And so the new SeaTac display, when you click on it, even though the radar is located up here on Camino Island, it would show up and down the sound and for SeaTac Airport. But now, because the new display will stitch both radars together, you can get both Langley Hill, which is right about here. And so it will now integrate with the display from SeaTac. Whereas if we just had the old Langley Hill display, these are all at the same time. You end up with here, this shows the front as it was coming on shore tonight, but it doesn't show anything in the sound. Whereas this is what it looked like from SeaTac radar, and it shows the, you know, sort of light rain that we had down to the south that was moving up north. And down here off the coast, it doesn't show any of this. But with the new radar, it's nicely stitched together, and it shows both for the SeaTac radar and Langley Hill. And so that'll be new, hopefully, by about the 16th of this month. So they had scheduled it for the 8th. And then if you want to, you can still click on the arrow down here and get about a 30 to 40 minute loop of how it's moving and what direction it's moving, which can, you know, I use it to figure out when I can go ride my bicycle and see if I'm going to get wet or not. And then you can also go to select different locations up here, and all of the radar stations on this chart will show up, and then you can click on individual ones. So that's going to be a nice new addition to the National Weather Service in Seattle.
Bruce, we've got a real good question coming in on the chat line from Harbin Rogers. Can you comment on using the 500 millibar chart and sea surface reports for tracking movement of low pressure in the Pacific to forecast bad weather here?
Oh, the answer to that is absolutely. You do have to use both. And that is just critical. The 500 millibar chart is the upper atmosphere one. And basically the chart will show you the altitude at which the 500 millibar pressure gradient exists. And like
roughly about 18,000 feet is my reference point.
Yeah, correct. And that it'll show up on the chart as 564, 5,640 meters above sea level. And so and that will tell you the orientation of the jet stream. It will show you in particular where the low is. And if the low is extending up into the upper atmosphere, it can tell you how strong it is and how it's directing the jet stream and how it's directing pressure systems at the surface. So absolutely you can. And the way that you do that, let's see if I can do this.
You're going to jump over to the NOAA Ocean Prediction Center Pacific, which is what I use. And that will have both your surface level and your 500 millibar chart, so you can flip back and forth between them.
Yeah, and here you can look at them in, I don't know if OPC has these in color yet, but this, for instance, is the 24-hour for tomorrow. So this shows, you know, sort of a wimpy little high pressure. Are you seeing this high pressure system?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
And a stronger low pressure system out here, except that it's not moving towards us. It's moving off to the northwest. This is a stationary low pressure trough here. So now what you try to do is figure out, okay, well, if I was looking at this, where would I guess the jet stream is? And then you go down, if you're doing your own forecasting. No, thank you. We go down here to upper air. We go to 24 hours. And we go, okay, and basically here's that low. Here is the jet stream here going up and over that high, which is why it was driving that low pressure system away from us. And here's that wimpy little low pressure system here. So this correlates then with what we're seeing in the surface analysis. So you just go back.
Bruce, what are those things with triangles and lines on them?
Okay, these are the wind feathers, and these tell you what wind strength is. And so basically up here with the low, and remember the feathers always point towards the center of the low. And so when you get down here, this is what we call zonal flow. You see the jet stream line here, 564. When it's going straight across parallel to the degrees of latitude, that's zonal flow. As it starts to go north and south, that's meridional flow. And then you've got these wind arrows tell you how strong this is. The flag means 50 knots. And so here you've got 90 knots here. As it gets closer together, here's 115 knots here. And for your friends that are trying to fly back from Hawaii, they get a lovely tailwind on the Great Circle route here that's, almost 100-knot tailwind. And I got to think about this, last winter, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner got hooked up with the jet stream and was clocked speed over ground at 1,200 miles an hour in a 250 mile an hour jet stream. So this is, and again, this is at the altitude. And so all of these wind feathers, that's 30 knots, that's 45, there's 40. And basically when you get down to a single feather, that's 10, and a half a feather is 5. Does that make sense?
It's fascinating.
Bruce, as we wrap up here, anything else you want to share?
Let's see. Can't wait to go to the boat show, the visual Seattle Boat Show Connect. And again,
Yeah, Bruce is going to be doing a 2-hour Boat Show University seminar on weather, where you can learn these techniques just as he's describing, and how to begin to put your own forecast together to understand what the weather's going to be like. Incredibly important when you get out on the water, and where he'll show you how to make your go or no go decisions.
And if you sign up for the class, you have my email, lbruce@msn.com. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to email me questions. I'm happy to answer them. And, for that 2-hour seminar, send those to me and I'll work them into the seminar and we can answer them then.
Thanks, Bruce, appreciate the plug. We've got a question here from Joel for the San Juan forecast. You mentioned HRR, but what is the best website to get the data?
The best one is you can use SailDocs, and that is free. And you just, go into SailDocs. It'll go through the whole tutorial about how to request it. And it's basically send HRR, define the boundaries, define the resolution, which is maximum resolution is like 0.03. That's 0.03 of a degree. And then it'll go out for 18 hours.
So that's SailDocs, DOCKS?
DOCS, saildocs.com. And then you can get a free Grib, download a free Grib app like from PredictWind, and then you can import that data into the Grib file into the charting, and it'll map it out for you and show what the wind is going to be for the San Juan Islands.
Good stuff. Thank you.
It's a lot of cool stuff, understanding the weather. And it's my reality TV. If I ever get bored, go look at the weather, because it's always changing. It's going to be different every time you look. Bruce, that's fantastic. I really thank you. You're my hero anyway. And every time we sit down and have these kinds of discussions, I learn something new. And can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Peter. Lorena and Leonard, thank you. And this was a great way to spend Thursday night. And as I said, I'm happy to answer questions anytime.
Sweet. Appreciate that. Well,
thank you again.
Bruce, we're going to start landing this plane about right now. What's on tap for next week?
In terms of weather?
Well,
Bruce, Mark, whoever.
Well, it's going to be wet.
I'll cover it.
As I said, the La Nina thing is, it's the real deal. And unfortunately, it is going to be coming at us. And we had this nice little break in the weather. And unfortunately, is this the sea surface temperature anomaly chart up?
It's not.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But bring out your bumper shoot.
We'll take
your
more
word
wet
for it.
weather coming.
Yeah. All right. I guess that's
All
what we
right,
signed
well,
up
that
for.
means next Thursday night, Peter, our numbers are going to be up.
Oh boy,
Because
not
it'll be wet
possible.
weather. Nobody will want to be outside, and they'll want to watch Seattle Boat Show live. We're going to have Sean and Elizabeth, who've created their own channel on YouTube with MV Freedom. They're Nordhaven 43 and the cruising that they do. And I really enjoyed what they've put together. And you might want to take a look and just look at YouTube and search MV Explorer. You'll see it. And I think you'll enjoy them quite a bit. And I should also mention our sponsors for tonight, Gene Grosbeck Realty in Anacortes for your waterfront dreams with docks for sale, property, some beautiful homes in the Anacortes area. And Gene and her associates can find you and show you just some spectacular properties. So we thank Jean Grosbeck and her crew for sponsoring us, as well as we're sponsored by, you ready, Peter?
I'm ready, sir.
The 2021 Wagner Guide, which is now going to be available in stores starting next week. It's available at the Wagner store in Anacortes. We do delivery directly to your car. You don't even have to, we do ask that you order it online, but we'll be happy to bring it out and deliver it to your car. And if I'm here, I'll even sign it. The Landons will sign it. And someday on eBay, it might be worth a fortune, but probably not.
Oh,
So, well, you never know.
a prophet in his own
Anyway.
land.
Yeah. So that's where we are for this week and for
Sounds
next
good.
week. You now have learned a lot more about the weather and even your own report for next week. And get out to some of those boat parades this weekend.
Do you have your Christmas tree yet, Mark?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. It's sitting right up, looking out over the Guaymas Channel. And I'm looking forward to Christmas this year.
You got a Charlie Brown one or a big spruce? What'd you get?
Not a big spruce. I don't live in the palatial mansion like you do in NMTA headquarters.
Oh, sure.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Exactly.
it's nice. I know the Landons have a nice tree. I've seen their tree. And I should say the Landons have a new addition to their family. We'll have to bring Eddie, E-D-D-Y, Eddie, as in a title Eddie, onto the show. Maybe he'll make an appearance and everybody can meet the Landon's new boating dog.
Excellent. Well, it's a fun show tonight, Bruce. Always great to see you. Landon's excellent report. Thank you, Mark. Good to see you. I don't know if you all stayed around for the last week's final part of the show, but I ended up having to do a little bit of karaoke myself with no volume. So that was a real thrill, I'm sure, for our.
Yeah, we got a lot of letters about that.
Yeah. Molotov cocktails, all of it. So yeah, you might
You're
be
a brave
surprised.
man, Peter.
Yeah, I didn't
You
know
were
that was
brave.
happening. It just organically happened. But episode 28 for us, it's our Liveville. That would have been Karen Black, who's I don't know, but John Prine was the musical guest, famous
Interesting.
songwriter, singer. We lost him to COVID early on, and
Yeah.
for sure. So it was a pleasure doing tonight. We had a big crowd tonight. We'll see you all next Thursday night.
All right,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Have a good time. Good night.
Thank you,
Safe out
Peter.
there.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Bruce. Good night.